Today, I'm hot-footing it across London to the doctors. Don't worry, I don't have a rash. I've got a very important appointment with Dr. Louise. Mum of 3, she's agreed to meet me to prescribe something a bit different. A dose of honesty about how she saved $3,000 on a family holiday. How? By breaking the law. Louise, not her real name, is one of 350,000 parents taking their children out of school during term time every year just to nab a cheaper holiday. Today on Money Confidential, is taking your children out of school for a week in the sun financially savvy or just selfish? Welcome to Money Confidential with me, Katie Morley. As the Telegraph's financial agony aunt, I'm heading up and down the country to hear directly from you and the awkward everyday money problems affecting your life and relationships. Each episode, I'm also joined by a financial expert in their field to help solve these dilemmas, as well as a Telegraph columnist offering their thoughts. Today, we're skipping school. Not the kids, the parents. We all love that feeling of finally relaxing on the plane, waiting for the seatbelt sign to turn off. But with travel companies dialing up the prices of flights, accommodation and more during the holidays, some parents are choosing the £60 a day fine in order to save bigger money on the break. But how much money are we actually talking? Before I spoke to today's interviewee, I caught up with travel expert Jen Carpias, aka the Travel Mum on Instagram, to find out more about the financial incentives.
So I was recently comparing some prices with Centre Parks and looking at going in June during term time for 7 nights. The cheapest I could find was £1,200. That's for a family of 4. Looking at the same place in August, 7 nights, the price is coming out at £2,300. So you're saving £1,100 by going in term time, which is obviously to miss just a couple of days of school. The fines being issued when you miss 5 consecutive days or more. People are being tempted to skirt around that, I guess, and just miss 2 or 3 days and get those cheaper prices.
And as you say, that might be more palatable for some people who don't want to miss, they're uncomfortable with missing that much school. But when it's just a couple of days.
Yeah, we've spoken to our followers about it, and a lot of them just say they're scared. They feel like naughty children missing those few days. It's how the schools make them feel when they say, oh, we're going to be on holiday for 3 days. They just feel bad doing it. And it's that British nature, isn't it, where we don't want to offend or upset.
And of course, it is illegal, taking kids out of school for a holiday. A finable offence. What other ways can people save money on holiday?
Always look at DIY travel, and it's something that we're really big on. We rarely book packages, but booking your flights and your hotels separately can save you an awful lot of money, because doing that you can travel light, so you don't have to take one of those large suitcases with all of your wardrobe in. We often travel with just rucksacks on a budget flight, and that saves an absolute fortune. We don't reserve seats. That in itself can save a lot of money. Not having those arranged transfers, using public transport instead. Just changing your mindset in that a holiday doesn't have to be the typical package where your hand is held from A to B and you get your arranged transfers, you have those large suitcases. It doesn't have to be like that. By just changing your mindset a little bit and cutting back on lots of different things, you can save a lot overall. By not taking a large suitcase, you can possibly save yourself £100, which is, a lot of cocktails when you're on holiday.
Which we'd all probably rather have.
Yeah.
And tell me about free kids places. How can you get those?
So a lot of package companies offer the free child places, and they're definitely worth looking at if you've got kids. Always compare DIY versus package, but you do find that package holidays do win out when there are free child places. So like Jet2 holidays, TUI do them. So just shopping around, especially if you are a single parent, because a lot of them need to have 2 paying adults to get the free place.
Okay. And do last minute deals often come up in the school holidays, or are you more likely to find something during term time?
Much more likely during term time, but they do occasionally come up in the school holidays. Obviously, these third-party providers have paid for these rooms and they need to sell them. I think we went to Menorca, we got flights for £35 return in August, and we booked them 2 days before. So you can get really good deals like that if you're willing to wait until the last minute.
Thanks so much to Travel Mum there. With this growing trend in parents skipping school with their children, I wanted to speak to someone who's actually done this. Dr. Louise, not her real name, reached out to me and was happy as Larry with her bargain holiday to the slopes. My first question was, how much term time did her kids miss?
They missed 1 week during term, and then they had another week back, and then it was the Easter break. So it was coming towards the end of the term anyway. We were aware that other parents from the school had done it, and I think we'd always shied away because of the fear of authorities, being cross with us for doing it. And then when we started looking into it this time round, we looked at the base price of the holiday just 3 weeks later, and for the family of 5, it was going to be about £3,000 more, which is ludicrously expensive.
It's a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Could pay for another holiday.
Well, exactly. And I know it's a privileged position to be going on a skiing holiday, but when the kids are still young, they're not towards kind of exam years and things. We thought, surely it's not that bad to take them out.
How did you go about informing the school?
So we told them with about 3 weeks notice, I think, a month's notice. But to be fair, we hadn't booked the holiday that far in advance. I know I've spoken to other parents who've kind of waited until the last minute to dob themselves in. But yeah, we gave them about 3 weeks notice. The headmaster at the school knows that we are working, healthcare, so it's not always easy to get flexible time off. So he was quite understanding. He says, there's some leeway, so because it's an independent school, we don't get fined. They can't authorise the time off. It still goes down as unauthorised absence on their school record. But we didn't face too much hassle.
So no
about
fines.
it.
Teachers were sort of broadly okay with it. Did you feel a little bit of judgment there?
Not so much judgment. We felt guilty, but actually the school were fairly accepting of it. And I think it's probably because our kids are all lower down the school, but actually most people were fairly supportive.
Did you feel they missed out educationally?
I mean, that when they're so young, and it's quite an academic school anyway, we did kind of take reading books with us and stuff as well. And again, it's to assuage our guilt, I think, to make us feel like we're doing something with them. I don't think they missed out. And you're between a rock and a hard place, because I know I've spoken to other parents who've pulled a sickie, but the kids would surely dob you in. It's just, they'd come back and say, we had a great time skiing.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't worth it.
Did you feel any judgment from other parents at any point?
There have been, interesting. Some parents are really, really against it. Either from the money perspective of when you're paying all of this money for them to go to the school, why would you waste the money by taking them out? Or if I go on holiday outside of school holidays, I don't want other people's kids to be ruined by holiday. So you get quite different viewpoints on it.
Also, if they're taking a different point and they are paying the extra £3,000,
yeah.
Do you think they're thinking, am I in wrong?
Yeah, slightly better. Yeah. So lots of different, split viewpoints, I would say, in our kind of friendship group.
I couldn't help asking her, would you do it again?
It's a tricky one. Having had an amazingly quiet week where the kids basically got private ski lessons and stuff like that, probably yes. It's difficult, you do have to kind of, we want to keep a good relationship with the school. We don't want to kind of keep trying our luck. So I think that would be the biggest factor in terms of the disciplining from the school, particularly when they get older, whether, it is going to have an impact and things like that. It was lovely, but I think I might feel too guilty to do it again.
Yeah, not too much.
Yeah. A day here and there, I think, is different from a full week. We have come back from a holiday where they've missed a Monday, I think. I think one day is very different from a week.
Yeah.
So I'd be hesitant to do it again, despite the massive saving. So it is important to have that family time,
it's
together.
So precious, isn't it? When you're both working so hard.
Yeah.
That family time is rare.
Really, really important. We split our childcare during the week. So my husband's at home, a couple of days a week. I'm at home a couple of days a week. And then we have, parents to support us. And then weekends are busy, all of the kids doing different sports. So actually the times when we are just all 5 of us together, doing things together are really only in holiday times when we're abroad. Because even or if we go camping, in Devon and stuff, I don't know if that's important enough to justify taking them out of school, but we felt like it was on this occasion.
And there is this thing in the travel industry, isn't there, where
there is one price for term time and there's one price for non-term time, and that is a huge disparity between the two.
Yeah.
Why do you think the gulf is so wide?
I can see the reasons behind it, but I do think there's kind of an unfair markup. When I was looking at the base price of the holiday, it was between 2 and 3 grand more by going, 2 weeks later.
How did that make you feel?
You're just angry that you're kind of, you feel penalised for having children, as teachers probably feel penalised because, they can only go in school holidays as well. But it does feel unfair that the markup is so high.
Especially when you've got 3 kids.
Yeah. And that's a personal choice, not necessarily, but it's a personal choice as well. So, you can't, play the victim and say, woe is me because I've got 3 kids, it's cheaper if you've only got 1. But it does feel you're being penalised by, putting up the rates so much.
Do you think you viewed this topic differently before you had kids, or?
Yeah, I was probably one of those people that, would happily always, avoid school holiday times and be slightly cross if there were noisy kids on a plane when I was trying to enjoy my peace and quiet. I probably didn't realise the cost difference, because I would have always avoided school holidays because I could. I probably wasn't aware of the differential in price.
What would your advice be to other parents who are thinking about doing this?
I think there is, it is different if you're talking about being fined and things like that. I've spoken to various parents who would happily kind of accept the fines and say, well, actually, if the fine's 150 quid per child, I can still save, 10 times as much as that by going out of school holidays. I'm kind of looking around at, different options. For kind of ease, we've gone down the package routes, but I know you can kind of save lots by kind of, building the stuff together, so that I know the margins are better if you do it that way. But then if you're looking for holidays where you've got childcare options as well, the discrepancy in terms of the markup is massive.
But in terms of the relaxation for the adults, there's no
still wants a holiday.
Yeah,
you still want a holiday. Yeah. Having said, we want quality time with our kids. We actually want some help to look after them. Yeah. Finding the right balance.
Sometimes I look all drinking a cocktail.
Yeah. Find the right balance.
Thanks to Dr. Louise for sharing her story. She makes an interesting point that the age of children plays a big role. What do you think? Selfish or savvy? Is it easier doing this if the children are in a private school? Coming up, I picked up the phone to Britain's strictest headmistress, Catherine Babalsing, to get her thoughts on this growing phenomenon. Before then, I wanted to share the thoughts of Telegraph readers on this topic of term time travel. We asked you on Facebook, would you take your children out of school during term time for a cheaper holiday? Peter says yes, sometimes a family holiday can have more value and better learning experiences than staying at school. And spare a thought for school teachers who are forced to pay a premium price for their family holidays. Well, Peter, as the daughter of a teacher, I can tell you that's true. Toomey agrees. Yes, travelling is also an education. Classrooms are overrated. Joe says, I don't blame parents who take kids out of school for cheaper holidays, as travel companies are exploiting families and teachers have strike days, which impacts on families as well. Lewis has strong opinions. He says, yeah, I'm on holiday right now. Daughter just finished her SATs, so we took her away. It's okay when the teachers wanted to take days off last year. Striking, meaning some of us lost either days in work or money having to put them in daycare of some sort. Don't double standard me, and also don't tell me what I can and can't do with my kids. Well, that's them told. However, on the flip side, Heidi says, I never took my kids out of school for a holiday. I learned as a school governor early on how hard it is to teach children their whole curriculum in just 38.5 weeks. It is such a challenge for the teachers, and taking kids out makes it even harder. Andrew agrees with her. He says, kids need to be educated. And Debs strikes an interesting balance. She says, I used to every year when at primary, but since the kids have been at senior school, I haven't taken them out. What do you think? Email your thoughts and experiences to moneyconfidential@telegraph.co.uk. Right, phones off and eyes straight ahead. I wanted to get a professional educational opinion on it. So I asked Catherine Babalsingh, the woman who runs the Michaela Community School in London, one of the country's top performing state schools. She's been nicknamed Britain's strictest head teacher, so I thought she'd have a zero tolerance approach to this. But what she said did surprise me somewhat. Your school has a policy of no holidays during term time, and in fact, kids aren't even allowed to attend doctor's appointments, is that right?
Well, routine doctor appointments. So hospital appointments and orthodontist appointments, we understand, you don't have any choice about. But otherwise, you would book them after school.
So what's your view of parents that take their kids out of school for cheaper holidays then?
Well, our parents wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that because they wouldn't want to miss out on the learning that goes on here. So I'm often torn on this issue for families where they feel that the children will not miss out on much in the classroom because they're just not learning that much anyway. If you miss a day at Michaela, you are missing a huge amount, and the parents are well aware of that. And the children wouldn't ever not want to be here because they know that they're going to be really far behind if they've missed a day. If that isn't the case in your school, I can understand why parents think, well, look, it doesn't make much difference. I can take my child out.
And what would you say if a parent came along and said, look, we're going to save a few £1,000s on a skiing holiday. Do you mind? Or what would be your response?
I would say you signed a contract at the beginning when you came to the school and you agreed to never do that. And they just wouldn't dare. They wouldn't do that because they recognize the contract, the verbal contract and the written contract that they enter into with the school. But I also think their children wouldn't let them do it because the children know just how much they're learning daily. And it's important to say that if at school they're not learning huge amounts daily, I can see why a parent might think, well, it doesn't make that much difference, so I might as well take them out.
When we're talking about a child's education, do you think it's more damaging at any particular stage to be taking them out? So when they're in primary or secondary, are there any kind of points where it's okay and points where it might not be okay?
As I say, it depends on what you're getting from the school, but obviously coming up to their exams, GCSEs that are happening now, it would be a total disaster to take your child out months before. And also, even in a school where you feel they won't be missing out on that much learning, the fact is you are teaching your child to drop out of stuff and to not just persevere when it's hard. And that is never a good thing to teach a child. But yeah, obviously just before exams, not just external exams, but there may be internal exams at the school. And if you're disrupting the business of preparing for exams, learning about what it is to struggle with something and persevere with it, if that is undermined, then I do think you are harming your child.
This is a huge phenomenon, kids coming out of school in term time for holidays because of the way that travel bosses are pricing the holidays. They are really incentivizing parents to do this. They know it may not be in the kids' best interest, but so many parents tell us that they wouldn't be able to offer their children the wonderful experiences of the holidays that they are going on during term time if they were going in the school holidays, because the price is literally thousands of pounds more. How responsible do you think these travel bosses are, for hiking the prices of hotels and flights during the school holidays?
Yeah, I know. It is terrible. And nobody knows that better than teachers, of course. Because if the teachers all decided to just go off on holiday when they wanted to, because they would like to take their families on holiday, then obviously no one would be there to teach the children. So teachers are well aware of the fact that it is very difficult to afford holidays during holiday time.
Do you think there's a kind of education of a different kind to be gained from a family holiday? Absorbing oneself in a different culture or learning a new sport like skiing? Education doesn't just come from school, does it?
No, absolutely. That's why it's so great if families go on holiday during the holiday times where they can do that kind of learning and they can do the kind of learning that they do at school during school time.
But what about if they couldn't afford it during the holidays?
Well, you could ask the same thing of teachers, but we do expect our teachers to be in, and it's the same for the children.
Yeah, daughter of a teacher here, so I do know. And what would your message be to a parent who is debating this at the moment? If money really is coming into this, it's a huge financial saving to be made by taking the kids out of school. What would your thought process be for them? How would you help them decide whether to do this or not?
Like I say, it depends on the school. I totally understand when a family looks at the last week of school before the holidays and perhaps the children are watching lots of videos, because that does happen in some schools. And they're spending a whole week just going from lesson to lesson, watching video after video. And the parent thinks, well, they could miss a bunch of videos and I could save £2,000 on our holiday. I'd rather do that. I get it. I totally understand. That wouldn't happen here at Michaela, you see, which is why the families just wouldn't take their children out. So, again, I just come back to, I have mixed feelings on it, depending on where you are and what the school is like.
What do you think it sort of teaches kids about school if you are prepared to take them out of during term time? Is there a sort of moral message there?
Well, not if they're watching videos, and that's where the responsibility then goes back on the school, because perhaps shouldn't be doing that, because it then encourages the parents to make these decisions. What can the parents say to the child? Well, we must stay in school because you have to watch those videos. There is no moral weight to it. So it's a complex situation, really.
So you're sort of saying that if it's a bad or a subpar school, then it might be okay?
Well, if what they're learning isn't really learning, then I understand why the parents would want to take their children out.
And is that going on at some schools, do you think?
Definitely. The whole last week, they might just be watching videos, definitely. And I do understand why a parent would look at that and think, well, if he's just watching videos and I can save thousands of pounds on my holiday, why wouldn't I take my child out? I do get that. But then on the other hand, if the parent is trying to take children out and the learning is happening and it is very good, that's where the parent is in the wrong.
And obviously the state system has fines, doesn't it, for parents that do take kids out? They have to pay fines. How effective do you think that system is?
Well, in my experience, the state isn't very good at pursuing these fines. When the media talks about this as if it's something that's happening all the time and so on and is affecting lots of families, that's certainly not been my experience, but I don't know the stats on it.
But your parents aren't asking to take their kids out of school because you feel they recognise the value of the education that they're getting during all days of the year?
Definitely. And in fact, if they ever do miss a day, it's the last day when they have a reward event and they have a film. Right? And so that might be the day that they would miss. And that's because parents know, oh, well, look, it's just a film.
So they do watch films, but for one day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not a week.
Exactly.
Catherine, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
In just a mo, we'll be hearing from the Queen of Common Sense, Camilla Tominey. At one point, her children achieved 100% attendance in primary school, but her head was once turned by bargain flights to Fuerteventura. Back in a tick. Welcome back to Money Confidential. Real people, real problems, real talk. To continue our quest for cheap fun in the sun and checking into the studio to help me unpack the holidays in term time debate is the editor of the Telegraph's new daily news podcast, The Daily Tea, and mother of three, Camilla Tominey. Camilla, Catherine is essentially saying it's up to parents to assess whether that last week of school is sticking around for. That's a lot to put on parents, isn't it?
Also, it's quite hard to tell because the children like to say this. The children like to say, oh, Mum, we're only watching videos and not doing much in that last week of term. I've had situations where mine have finished at lunchtime. I did this quite recently, actually. I'm not a serial person who takes their children out of school. I'm always pretty diligent, and I think that attendance is really important. And in fact, my children at primary school often got that 100% attendance certificate.
Very impressive.
Parenting win for me, among many parenting fails, by the way. So at half term, I realised that the girls, I've got 2 girls at a private school and a son at a state school. So I can never do that thing of early holidays because I have to be in line with my son's school term. And it so happened that I could get these flights to Fuerteventura for the last half term much cheaper if we went on the day that my son had a half day. I literally just figured it's a half day. He said he had a scheduled assembly to do and then some other more creative stuff. And I just thought I'd take him out. And I was honest with the school about it. I don't think they authorised it, but it was just a half day and I'm not a serial offender. I have known friends who have taken children out of school for an entire year to travel around the world.
Really?
And that seemed at the time to be quite controversial, but she took all of the books, she homeschooled them, and they had this wonderfully enriching experience of travelling through Australia, America, Southeast Asia. They went literally on a round-the-world trip, and I think their children have benefited from that. They were in primary school at the time. It wasn't as if they were doing this, in the year of GCSEs. I do think, by the way, there's more of an impetus, and it's more important to keep children at home in key holidays before exams, be they mocks or GCSEs. I've got a very academic oldest child who is like, I absolutely cannot go away for next May half term. And I would be like, well, no, of course not. You've got your GCSEs the following weeks. We wouldn't do that. I find the travel companies cynical. This is aimed towards making more money when people want to go on holiday.
And the price differences really are extreme, aren't they?
Absolutely. You only have to go on EasyJet or Ryanair and you do that thing where you juggle around the flights. And you can see that it goes from £79 on a school day to like £259 as soon as you get into the school holidays. It's literally that stark.
So on that note, what would be your best advice for sensible parents trying to weigh up, big cost savings versus doing the right thing for the kids' education?
Well, I just think everything in moderation. You don't want to be taking them out every time you go away. That's insane and silly. Also, a little bit of forward planning as far as summer holidays are concerned does keep the price down. But if it's a half day here and 1 day there, in order to save some bunts in what is a difficult time, there is a cost of living crisis still on. Get this whole government saying inflation's come down. Cost of food doesn't seem to have come down. Cost of people's utilities haven't come down. And soon the cost of school fees, if you're one of those parents paying those, might go up. Equally, there is this argument that people who are paying for school fees are sacrificing on foreign holidays and maybe doing more staycationing because they don't have the money. So I think in general, don't take the mickey, because I just don't think that sends a good signal to the children, let alone the teachers. But I think occasionally perhaps you can bend the rules. Also, by the way, I just advocate honesty. I mean, when you've got 2 children in one school, you can't pretend that one of them's ill. It doesn't work. Oh, yeah. One of them's ill and one of them's, or both of them are ill at the same time. You just have to
so just being upfront.
I think you should. Because also, don't forget, teachers have got children. They face these dilemmas themselves.
Absolutely. And if Britain Strictest has teacher is on the fence, then well.
But I think she makes an interesting point, doesn't she? She's saying at Michaela, you wouldn't have this kind of tail-off end of term where 2 weeks, nothing much happens. And maybe she's right with that. Do you know what you also do? I think you don't just judge it on what the school's doing, you judge it on your own child. Is your child normally diligent, doing their homework, keeping on top of the work? Then a day off here or there isn't going to harm their educational experience. If they're constantly slacking, playing truant, and you're contributing to that and not allowing them to have a fulfilling school experience, and I think then you are responsible for a parenting fail.
And also, if they're young enough, they might not even realise. Is that fair to say? If you sort of don't tell them this is happening, they may not even know.
No, that's true. And actually, I mean, pre-year 6, year 7, I think there's a lot more flexibility. And I know that's probably quite controversial. Look, GCSE and A-level years are sacrosanct. You could have an argument that year 6 and SATs is sacrosanct. I think you could have a bit more flexibility between them without taking it too far.
Thank you so much, Camilla Tominey. Thank you to Camilla there for her Money Confidential debut. Has today's discussion changed your stance on term time holidays? As a parent myself, I was surprised to hear a head teacher, especially one as strict as Catherine, say that she had mixed feelings on the issue and placing the onus on parents to gauge the quality of the education their children are getting in those last few days of term to decide whether it is worth a cheap holiday. Whilst we can all only hope to achieve a flawless attendance rating like Camilla Tominey and her kids, I think it was refreshing to hear that even she has been tempted by those cheaper term time flights. What did you think? Will you be making those savings on your next package holiday like Dr. Louise, or are you aiming for that perfect attendance like Camilla? Let me know by emailing me directly or sending a voice note to moneyconfidential@telegraph.co.uk, and I read every message. For more money-saving advice on holidays, you can head over to Telegraph Money and Telegraph Travel, where you can find plenty of money-saving tips and helpful pointers on how to book your next family break. A spokesman from the Association of British Travel Agents said, "The reason prices rise during school holidays is due to supply and demand. Many people in the UK and across Europe take holidays during the peak periods, which is also when most schools are on holiday. This further increases demand for a limited number of hotel rooms and flights solved. And fancy me, And if you have a money dilemma you want solved, and fancy me popping round for a cup of tea and a chat, email me at moneyconfidential@telegraph.co.uk, or you can fill out the form via the link below. It takes about 60 seconds and you can be totally anonymous. Thanks for listening to Money Confidential. Please do help grow the show by rating on your podcast app and leaving a nice review. My mum reads them, so don't be too mean. You can find me on Instagram at moneybackmorley, audio engineering and mixing from Robin the Fog, and thanks to my producer Isabel Boujard and series producer Giles Gear. Ta-ta for now, sausage!